and you guys moved across the country.
We also were looking for something that didn't cost $2 million to get into it. From an affordability standpoint, we felt pretty confident, even if we're not making millions of dollars right out of the gate, it's going to be survivable. We came to a totally unknown area, and we were still able to have a lot of success on social media because of the content and guidance that's coming from corporate. We hit profitability almost immediately. We've seen and benefited from a lot of the successes of kind of being in there daily and hands-on and interacting with our sellers and customers and creating relationships. And that's been really awesome to see.
Zach, thanks for jumping on with us today. Super excited to talk about Indy Clover and your experience with them. Zach, welcome.
Hey, we're excited to be a part of it. Happy to chat with you.
Yeah, a little bit. I guess I'll introduce you a little bit. You're from Utah. Logan looked at Indy Clover, thought it was a cool concept, wanted something, a career change, but it was already sold out of Utah. So you said, hey, I might be willing to move. And then Tyler hits you up. He's like, okay, so where are we moving? And you guys landed, 2.5, 3 years later. Now you guys are in the Fort Worth, Dallas area. You have 2 stores opening and looking for a third location.
We were looking, like you said, we were just kind of looking for a little something different. And we were looking for something that we had, some ownership in and could really build something, that we could hopefully grow and had an opportunity for multiple locations. And we were looking for something that we could, my wife and I, just worked and do together. So we thought it was very innovative. I think, we had the same response that a lot of our customers and sellers have when they come into the store. Hey, this is new. This is a great idea. How has this not been around? So all of those things were very attractive. And we thought, well, hey, this is something that we could really take and run with it.
Yeah. I mean, and you guys moved across the country. So one, it was finding a cool model that you guys like, kind of new and exciting and in a cool space. But what made you confident enough, I guess, to say, yeah, I'll move to Texas. What clicked for you there?
Yeah, I mean, I think there were a few things about the franchise and the model that were attractive to us and gave us confidence. One, we felt like, as I said before, the concept is a winning concept. So we had a lot of confidence in that. We also were looking for something that didn't cost $2 million to get into it, and so that was really attractive for us with this franchise model, low compared to a lot of other franchises that we looked at. So it was doable for us. And there's not a lot to the construction, and so we were able to, we at least anticipated that would be an affordable thing. So from an affordability standpoint, we felt pretty confident that, like, okay, well, even if we're not making millions of dollars right out of the gate, it's going to be survivable. And then the other thing that was really attractive to us and continues to be one of, I think, the franchise's strongest features is the social media and marketing support. So, my wife and I, we're in our 40s. We're not going to be the face of Indy Clover on social media. We're not influencers. We're not marketing experts. We have some exposure to that in previous careers, et cetera. But the fact that Indy Clover's marketing department is as strong as it is, really taking each store and helping you sort of infiltrate a market, have fresh, on trend, relevant content that keeps your followers and customer base engaged, helps you get the word out. That's been a huge asset to us, and we feel like something that's a really valuable part of what the franchise offers. If we were just to come out, break into a brand new area where we don't know, our neighbors, I think that's another thing. If you were opening it in your hometown, you may have all these local contacts and ways of marketing and sort of getting the word out about your location. We came to a totally unknown area, and we were still able to have a lot of success on social media because of, the content and guidance that's coming from corporate.
Yeah, and I mean, the concept itself is so shareable as well. Not only for you, but you have an average of like 60 sellers maybe, right, that are coming in every week. And then I love how you guys promote for them to also promote their booth, right? It's like, okay, you just spent $30 to sell your stuff. How about protect your investment by posting it on Facebook so more people could come in, but it's helping you, it's helping the other sellers, it's helping them. I really love that. Yeah, the marketing around Indy Clover, I think you hit it right on the head. Super, super unique. You also mentioned the entry level point. You know, like it doesn't cost 2 million to start up. How much did your stores cost to start up? So we have the Plano, and then we also have Fort Worth. Um, and the follow-up question to that is, how did you pay for them? What did you do, financing, or did you just pay cash?
Yeah, we had a combination of both. We were taking a pretty big gamble on this, sold our home, used a lot of that equity, used some savings and investments, and then also had some, a minimal amount of outside financing that we utilized to get our first couple of stores open.
For people who don't understand that, just because not everybody's familiar with tenant improvements, when you sign a lease, I'm signing a 10-year lease, and if I'm gonna put money into this retail center, right, as a franchisee, the landlord says, "Cool, if you're gonna improve my space by putting XYZ in there, I'll give you money back," and then they're really, I guess, just charging that in the rent, right? But you paid 50,000 and you got $47,000 back from the landlord to open up the space, which is crazy. And then now outside of that, there's still the franchise fee, there's still equipment, grand opening marketing and all of that. On the marketing standpoint, what does Indy Clover corporate do? And what do I guess they not do that franchisees should be doing to get to that break even as quick as possible? And how quickly have you been able to see profitability in each of your stores?
Yeah, I mean, the corporate marketing model is really built out. So to give sort of the uninvolved individual an idea, the corporate has a marketing team that basically puts out a social media content calendar. They are full-time employees that are, looking at current trends, social media, reels, TikToks, what are people engaging in, et cetera. And they are providing every store with a calendar of content. Hey, here's today's reel. You're going to, do your own spin on it in your own store. But this is the trending audio that you can use, et cetera. They also will plug in like educational reels about how the concept works.
Uh-huh.
And we just have to have a couple of social media employees that are part-time, come in a couple hours a day, create the content, put it out there. So that's the power of the kind of the corporate side. There are occasionally a corporate video here and there, but yeah, every store will have social media employees that's creating content on site specific to that store and giving its own like personal twist to it. So, but again, these are 2 to 3 hour a day employees or shifts. So unlike if you were just to kind of start the concept and go off on your own, you likely need a full-time social media manager that was out there really with their finger on the pulse of what's happening in the social media, universe. Nobody can afford that. And so that's basically what corporate is providing. And then you just get, dynamic individuals that want to come in, create the content, post it, and you're looking at maybe 6 to 10 hours a week per employee. So you're getting content posted every day. That's the other thing is like they're very proactive. So each store is posting every day on multiple platforms in multiple ways, organic, some pre-made, some educational about the Indy Clover concept. Some of it's just fun and silly to kind of just engage with your audience or customer base, follower base. So all of that has helped us really sort of get on the map because, from time to time, you just get one of those reels that gets a little bit more exposure. And then pretty soon, you're adding followers and they're local, you know?
I love that you have all your sellers also marketing, which again helps get customers in. They are your customers as well, right? I'm going to set up a booth, but I'm also going to shop while I'm here. Um, how does that play into role on, yeah, your break even? And really, if you could kind of think about this, if I'm somebody wanting to buy an Indie Clover franchise and I'm opening up, my question is going to be, how much working capital should I have, on a safe side versus on a store that's a lot slower to start up?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. I mean, I think, we hit profitability almost immediately in our Plano location. We did market very heavily. We worked with a lot of local influencers. We, spent money on Instagram and Facebook and ads and different things like that. We also pushed our, like you mentioned, we would incentivize our sellers that are coming and selling in our store to post on social media about their experience. And if they did, we would give them a kickback, add $5, $10 to their payout for sharing a reel on Instagram or a TikTok. And that, helped, really get the word out quickly. Um, in our Fort Worth location, it was longer to sort of get that same profitability. We were closer to 6 to 8 months on really seeing sort of that return, which again, in the grand scheme, is pretty quick. But um, when we had the success that we had in Plano, we were a little
You're
bit
like, more
surprised.
than 2 months?
Yeah,
That
what's
wait,
happening? We're doing the same
six?
thing
What?
here, but so again, it goes back to there's a number of things that play into that, but I think that one of the biggest is location, location, location. You really want to pick that spot. You want to be able to make sure you have the people and the density and the population base to sustain a store. Not just there in the inception when you need to get to that profitability mark soon, so that you're not just feeding it and feeding it. But another thing that we've seen is on a long term, in order to have a store that's going to be continually booking booths and always staying relevant and having customer base, and it's not something that's like, oh yeah, I've already done that. And it's kind of like yesterday's news. You need to have that constant influx of customers and you need the population base to do that. We've definitely seen that. And we've seen, we have a ton of regulars every week that are always back but we're surprised, being 2 years in at one location and a year and a half in at the other location, how every day, oh, I didn't even know you guys were here. Oh, wow, this is a new concept. Oh, first time I'm hearing of it, and you got to be ready for that.
I love that. So moving on to operations. So you've been the full-time operator, you quit your job. Now, Indy Clover is a model that doesn't necessarily require that. I personally have seen in franchising when you do quit and you go in full-time, you're going to have better results. Um, Such as like, again, your Plano store. I don't know how far you live from Plano, but you're a lot closer than Fort Worth, which, allows it to kind of be your baby. But can you talk to me a little bit about the pros and cons of operating it yourself versus keeping your job? And then if you did keep a job now, that you've been operating it for a few years, how many hours would I need to be working to have as much success as possible?
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the exciting things about the franchise. I mean, I think, as you've mentioned, it's totally owner operatable as any is, but it's also not a requirement. And I think, we've seen and benefited from a lot of the successes of kind of being in there daily and hands-on and interacting with our sellers and customers and creating relationships and sort of building a foundation there where we think we attribute a lot of the success we've had to being in there and caring and being more invested. But you can certainly create a culture of that without being in the store every day. But one of the reasons I think that that's exciting for us anyway, as owner operators, is we feel confident and excited about the ability to be able to expand into multiple stores, and be able to manage and operate them without full-time managers, because ultimately there isn't 40 hours a week required for every store from an owner operator or manager. And so we're in there now because it is our full-time job. Well, it is my full-time job. My wife works part-time in the Plano location. But ultimately, as you get the system running and as you get employees trained and pick the right team, you're really in a position where the number of hours required to be in the store can drop pretty far. I know that there's a lot of successful franchisees out there that are spending, maybe 10 hours, 10 to 15 hours a week doing it.
Yeah, Zach. So the owner operator is I think ideal, but it definitely not required. A lot of the franchise owners in Indy Clover are definitely not in their store every day and not the owner operated, and they're still making $70,000 on average. I know you've had a different experience. You've had more success, especially in your Plano store, because you've been more involved. But yeah, kind of talk to me about that. How much better has it been that you have been more involved, and what do the numbers look like?
Yeah, I mean, we've been able to do about double that in our, if not a little bit more than double the average location in our Plano location. Various factors, but I think, we'd like to think that the owner operating element is a big part of that in terms of, just the ownership and the involvement and the relationships. So there's a lot of upside to the owner operated model. And I think you can, benefit from that. Um, but there's a lot of room in there for, between, the average store and our experience. And so I think, there's a lot of money to be made. It's a good and healthy model regardless of how you run it. We've had really great employees. We have a number of employees that have been with us since we opened the store. um, because you're not because none of our employees have the pressure of like a management position. I think it's a pretty laid back and positive environment. It's also one of those situations where, because the franchise model and concept is so good, our sellers are having a good experience for the most part because they're, getting rid of their clothes and they're making money. Our customers are having such a good experience because they're finding great brands at low prices and they're excited about it. So there's just a lot of positivity in the concept and in the model. And so, our employees, and the job isn't hard, I mean, it's all about just being friendly, helping our customers and sellers know about the concept. That's really the only kind of uh you know, element to it.
Yeah.
Hey, have you heard about our concept? Let me tell you about it. Otherwise, it's just the same as any other retail experience, checking them out, dressing rooms, putting stuff back, a little bit of dusting and vacuuming and whatever. So
And is it
it's
usually
not
like
a
one or two employees at a time, or what's
one
this?
or two. We
Okay.
literally, yeah, I mean, our Plano store is one of the top performing stores in the company, and we uh, typically have just one or two employees in the store at any given time. There are two times the week, Friday night and Saturday morning, when the transition of the booths is happening, where we may have three or four employees. Um, and that's a good time to be involved as an owner operator as well, or a non-owner operator, just because there's a lot of interaction with customers and sellers happening at that transition point. But yeah, I mean, and we're a resource, of course, as owner operators. So our employees, they're maybe hit us up with questions and concerns about customer service or issues more than maybe is needed, but we've made a made it conducive to that. So yeah, we haven't really. I mean, I come from a background in retail as well, so maybe it's a little less overwhelming for me.
What has been harder than what you expected? What's been the hardest part about owning a business?
Wow. Um, I think for us, having sort of always just worked for the man and not been our own business owner, the hardest part for us is kind of finding that balance of work life, and especially as owner operators, it's really easy to just kind of be all consumed. And that may be a difficult balance for the non-owner operator as well. Like, where do I draw the line? You know, is it 8 hours a week that I'm going to spend doing this, 15, 20? It could easily just creep up, creep up, creep up. And, there's never a time when the store isn't open in terms of, every day. And so, you're always just a text away from getting pulled into a little situation or whatever. So that's probably been the most, difficult but expected thing that comes with being a business owner and or entrepreneur, is you're going to just kind of have that tether always, even if you're on vacation or, especially if you don't have a full-time manager, which doesn't really make a lot of sense. So you kind of still have to be that touch point person. And not all your hourly part-time employees have access to everything on the back end. etc. I mean, I'm an old guy, but not that old. So I think that we, as we grow and expand, we will likely stay involved for, a while. But I do think, yeah, down the road, there is a really easy transition that could be made there where you have sort of a regional manager that can oversee multiple locations,
Hmm.
fulfilling the role that I would have been fulfilling in that space. I feel like they've been really open to feedback from the franchisees. I mean, it's a small franchise still in terms of,
20 units. Yeah.
20 units or whatever nationwide. And so, um, the fact that you have direct access to the owner and corporate team, I've always felt very heard, opinions valued. There's been a lot of things that have transitioned or policies that have changed or different things that we've done in the company that have been franchisee initiated in terms of, somebody had an idea somewhere and they shared it in a team meeting, with other franchisees and with corporate, and they've said, "Hey, yeah, let's do that. Why aren't we doing that?" Um, so, that's not the kind of, you can't guarantee that'll be the flexibility as the franchise grows like anything else. But in a lot of other established franchises, a lot of times it's just kind of like, do it this way and that's the way it's going to
Yeah.
be.
A
And it's
lot of
been
it's
nice to be
Tyler's
able to have some of that.
personality. I feel like
Sure.
that's just
Sure.
kind of
He's collaborative.
who he is, and I've known him for quite some time on just like, yeah, ideas, and he's that perfect textbook entrepreneur. Like, let's go, more exciting new ideas. So I love that. Last question for you, Zach. What has been the biggest change that you've seen in the last 2.5 years from, working a W-2 to being your own boss, you know, um, owning your business, being involved in the community? Talk to me about the lifestyle change.
Yeah. I mean, I think I get a lot of satisfaction from, uh, as a business owner, I think some of the things that have been satisfying and fulfilling for us, is, we feel like we're making a difference in some of our employees' lives. I mean, again, they're part-time jobs, but it's a positive environment. And, some of our employees, they're young and we have, an opportunity to kind of create a space where they're not only, um, having a positive work experience, but also having a positive experience with their local community, as they interact with sellers. And there have been a lot of relationships that have been made in terms of, friendships with sellers and shoppers and that type of thing happening in our store. Um, One of the things I love about the concept, and this is just kind of, again, going back to how much of a winning concept this is, these are interesting economic times, and it's really fulfilling to be able to provide an opportunity for individuals in households that may need a little extra to be able to come sell and make a little extra. We have a lot of individuals that are just selling maybe their own closet. We also have a lot of entrepreneurial spirits that are coming in. They're going out, they're thrifting items, reselling them in our stores, and it's kind of their own little side hustle. And they're making an extra, two, three, five, $600 a month. That makes a big difference to a family or an individual. And that's been, really awesome to see. We've been able to fuel, I think, some of that entrepreneurial spirit in some of our employees, even where they've seen some of these resellers in action, or they've had maybe ideas or aspirations of doing some of that as well. And they've gone out and been able to have some success as they've sold in our store in their own booths and, been able to kind of get some of that experience and see what it's like. And last but not least, I think it's been one of my favorite things in, as a family man is, I love it when I see moms, daughters, families coming into our store. They're finding great products, low cost, they're able to buy Lululemon or some of these other brands that maybe they wouldn't otherwise be able to afford. But then these, 13, 14, 16-year-old girls or whatever can go to school the next day and feel cute and, confident. And not that clothes is what the important thing, but, that's something that they maybe couldn't do otherwise. And so it's an awesome thing.
It's like the most community-based franchise that I've probably seen, which I love because you have 60 unique people coming in every week. selling their products, that you get to build a relationship, that are also earning money, that are also sharing your business on social media, right? And then they're also shopping, and it's just, I don't know, so cool. It's my wife's favorite place to shop here in Utah. She goes to the Linden one. And then, man, anytime I ever mention Indy Clover, everybody's like, "That's the best place. That's the best thrift store that's ever been invented," because it's such, yeah, it's just a really cool, fun experience and very community based. Zach, I really appreciate your time and sharing the story, the history, everything you've done so far with Indy Clover and opening up your first two stores. And I'm excited to watch you grow and continue to open them.